Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today, I'm talking about the fourth album from Pretty Lights, A Color Map of the Sun. So, we've finally made it to the big one. This is the album that got me into Pretty Lights and started up my eventual appreciation for hip-hop. I saw this album on the front page of Bandcamp a few days after it was released in summer 2013, heard the opening horn blares of Color of My Soul, and was instantly engaged. Later on, I saw Pretty Lights' documentary on the making of the album, and I was even more in love. The thing that sets this album apart from his other ones is that instead of going crate digging and doing his usual sample collage stuff, he went out to work with actual musicians and create his own samples. He'd play with a live band in Colorado and make breaks, he'd go to New Orleans and work with live horn players, he'd bring in vocalists to record original vocal samples. He even did all his synth work on analog gear. The result was a Pretty Lights album that still exemplified the guy's usual sound, but not a single sound on this album was sampled from a previously released recording. He oversaw everything. Now, to be perfectly fair, this idea had been done before, Amon Tobin's Foley Room, for example, but to the high schooler me, this was the coolest thing ever. This album has dominated my life, even more than any of the other Pretty Lights albums. And as you might expect from that, I have had an on-and-off relationship with this album just like all his others. As much as I appreciate all the effort poured into this album, I do have my problems with it. But to be honest, those problems often feel inconsequential in comparison with the huge amount of respect I have for Pretty Lights for having pulled this off. Even got a Grammy nomination for it, but didn't win it. Obviously, because they award popularity over quality. Not gonna pretend I'm still not salty over LaRue winning a Grammy over BT's These Hopeful Machines, but I digress. One thing that I did eventually notice about this album over the years is that it might be a little samey sounding. He set up this kind of dark drone kind of mood and went with it for the majority of the album. There is still quite a bit of variety, but nothing to quite the extent as, say, Filling Up the City Skies. But that's not to say it's uninteresting in any way. And may as well just go down track by track. Color of My Soul is this album's mission statement. Blaring horns, wailing vocals, excellent dubstep. It's a song that just slams you in the face and lets you know exactly what you're getting into. This track was also easily the highlight of the Pretty Lights concert that I saw. He had this live band playing with him and it was absolutely amazing, and the volume hadn't quite gone out of whack yet, so yeah, awesome. Press Pause is the next track, and this takes the sound into a more laid-back and emotional area. Great hook, and more awesome horn sections that set up a moody and highly engaging atmosphere, which contrasts heavily with the rough grittiness of the track right after that, Let's Get Busy. For all intents and purposes, I should hate this song, as it sounds pretty similar to tracks like How We Do and Who Loves Me from Filling Up the City Skies, but I like this track too. The synth work is a lot grittier and feels like it has more weight to it. Actually comes off weirdly satisfying. I mean, it doesn't play that much to my personal tastes, but I never actually skip it either. And I can't imagine myself ever doing so. Now, for the most part, this album has been kind of building up that sort of darker and brooding atmosphere, and while that does carry on for most of the album, it doesn't apply to every track. There are two huge examples that kind of break the mold. Incidentally, the next two tracks, Around the Block and Yellow Bird. I've said that when Pretty Lights actually tries to do feel-good vibes, he can really nail them out of the park. And there's no better example of this than Around the Block. This track is really fast-paced and sunny. Every single second is like this huge, exhilarating rush. And the addition of Talib Kweli, or however you pronounce it, talking about how everything is perfect and the sun is shining. Well, actually, I'm not sure if that specific part of the track is him, but he does rap on this track, and he definitely helps make the track that much more of a standout. It's one of those tracks that just puts me in a good mood easily. Heck, it's neck and neck with Finally Moving as the Pretty Lights track I've listened to the most in my life. However, the track Yellowbird has probably caught up somewhat as well. This track also showing off some great feel-good vibes, but in a much more laid-back, down-tempo, and psychedelic fashion. This song in particular is a great one just lay back and soak up. The alternating guitar and piano patterns are just sublime. I've never taken drugs, but this track gives me kind of an idea what the experience I might have. And as for other tracks on here, I'm not going to go in order as much and talk in more general terms from here on in. Like, the album admittedly doesn't finish as well as it started with its first 5 tracks, but the moody atmosphere started up by Color of My Soul and Press Pause carries on throughout basically the rest of the album. And there are admittedly a couple of tracks that just straight follow this mood without doing a lot to stand out. Go Down Sunshine, So Bright, Vibe Vendetta, One Day They'll Know, Always Always, or the closer track, My Only Hope. How much I like these tracks tends to depend on the quality of their hook and occasionally some outstanding instrumental flares or moments, like the violins on One Day They'll Know, and the hook, obviously. The unsurprising abundance of vibraphones on Vibe Vendetta, Eligh's hyperspeed rapping on So Bright, or hell, the weird psychedelic flange effects on Always Always. To be fair, I think all of the hooks on these songs are solid, and help make all of these songs become memorable in their own right. Like, Go Down Sunshine is not a standout in the context of the album, but I can still easily remember how it goes, and same with My Only Hope, even though I think the vocals on this track almost border on obnoxious. And quite frankly, I also really wish this was not the last track on the standard edition of the album. But whatever. Oh yeah, and there's also 2 tracks that are almost entirely made up of synth noodling, being Done Wrong and Prophet. The former is a more down-tempo and moodier, and admittedly blends into the background for me. But the latter has really been growing on me lately, and reminds me of the synth sections on high school art class. It's a crazy, spastic, and highly stimulating track. That's already a pretty solid collection there, but that only covers the standard edition of the album. The digital version has 3 bonus tracks, and there's also a second disc of some of the original live studio sessions that Pretty Lights recorded and sampled. Definitely don't recognize the cover of that one. There's a whole album of remixes of all the main tracks on the digital version except for So Bright, and finally an EP of 4 B-sides and their remixes called The Hidden Shades. That's a lot. Well, admittedly, I almost never listen to the remixes. Everything has a more up-tempo and intense spin on the originals, and the vast majority are like dubstep. The only one that might be remotely an improvement on the original, for me personally, is maybe Opio's remix of Done Wrong, which managed to get down a good hook on that one when the original didn't really have a hook to begin with. But even there, I listen to the original more often. And Datzik's remix of Around the Block is great in a live setting, but like Finally Moving remix from Filling Up the City Skies, I like it more when combined with the original in that live setting, but the rest just doesn't really do that much for me. Now, I do come back to the live studio sessions every now and then, and it's cool to hear these pure jam sessions, and they have a more stripped back feel to them than the final songs do. Also, it's fun to pin down which songs each session eventually went into. Some are definitely more challenging than others, but when you find some of the more obscure ones, it's always cool, so I can give my thumbs up on those. But getting back on topic, let's focus on the bonus tracks on the digital version and the B-sides on Hidden Shades. In my opinion, these tracks are just as worth discussing as the main tracks, as all of them were considered for the main album and just missed the cut. And actually, these tracks are kind of the center of my main criticisms of this album. The thing is, having heard 7 tracks that missed the cut for this album, I think had I curated this album I'd have done it a little differently. I'd probably traded Go Down Sunshine out for the first bonus track, Where I'm Trying to Go, which ironically had a much sunnier and hopeful feel to it than the one that actually has Sunshine in the title. Really a fantastic track there. Also, I mentioned that I think My Only Hope was kind of a lackluster ending. So I'd have replaced it with the first B-side from The Hidden Shades, Lost and Found. Now, this is a song that feels like an ending. I mean, it does almost kind of abruptly cut off at the end, but it's very nostalgic and haunting vibes I think would have made for a much more effective closer to this album. The other bonus tracks and B-sides admittedly don't strike quite the same chord with me as those two do. Like, Sweet Long Life is pretty good, kinda somewhere in between where I'm trying to go and press pause, but unfortunately not particularly catchy. And the last B-side, Can't Contain It, is like Let's Get Busy on steroids. It's like just a giant brick wall of noise dropped onto your head. I think I prefer Let's Get Busy myself as it's easier to remember the tune, but that's just me. Can't Contain It is pretty cool. The other tracks on The Hidden Shades, New Moon Sane Dark and Starlit Skies, just kind of serve to fill in spots for the game of guess which break from the live studio sessions goes with which song, but aren't huge standouts for me personally. And the other bonus track, All I've Ever Known, is probably my personal least favorite of the entire collection of 20 tracks. It's somewhere in between Let's Get Busy and Go Down Sunshine, and is just kinda not fun to listen to. At least it's not on the main album, though. But finally, after all that, time for my final thoughts on Color Map as a whole. I think you can tell, just from the huge amount of things I had to say on this album, that I still love this one. Are there edits I could make to the track listing to make it a little better? Yes. Is it the kind of album that I'm always in the mood to listen to anytime? No. But I can't deny that it still holds up, and on top of that, none of Pretty Light's other work to date comes close to this. The fact that it's all 100% original is a big part of that, but Pretty Lights was definitely trying to craft a sort of atmosphere with this album that I think he really nailed. Like, his channel has a series of music videos for every song on the album and Lost and Found from Hidden Shades, and they're all, like, abstract cityscapes with graffiti and cool camera filters and other neat visuals, and this is basically the perfect pair-up for the atmosphere of this album. It's dark and gritty like the darkest parts of the inner city, but seen through a lens of psychedelia that gives it all these neat, colorful details. This is one of those albums that I wish I could just forget every detail and experience for the first time again, as I won't deny I overplayed it in high school, just like all Pretty Light's other stuff, maybe even more so. But I'm still gonna give credit where credit is due. I don't really know what else to say about this album. I know Pretty Lights is going to be coming out with a new album this year sometime. I don't know what I'm going to expect out of that, but I doubt he's going to be able to top this one. I'm overall feeling a solid 9 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.